That's it.
All right, so just let us know if that chop comes back. I think I fixed it. I think we're good. But we're going to get started. So, good morning, everyone.
Hi, everybody.
December 1st, 10 a.m., and we're here with the first episode of
the inaugural episode.
That's right.
Yes.
And
complete with dog toy squeaking.
We've got Balin in the background. That's right. But aside from Balin, we've got myself, Scott, and Brian Winter.
Hello.
With I'm Board Games, and we're here to talk to you. We'll talk to you for an hour about things in the industry that we have our mind on, and feel free to offer your questions as well. If you have any, type them in. We've got the chat up. We'd like to hear from you.
And we are going to make it a hard hour. We're gonna do 11 o'clock stop.
That's right.
For those of you who actually have to work today.
For those of you who've turned into our last videos.
Yes.
So, since we only have an hour, and it is 10, why don't we
Let's
get
started?
To it. Yeah. So, one of the things on my mind, just thinking back to the industry in general, is all of the news we heard, and in the mainstream media everywhere, just picking up on the board gaming industry in general, and commenting that board gaming is making a comeback,
right,
or on the rise.
Right.
Would you say that's still the case? I don't see those articles anymore. Is board gaming still on the rise?
Yes, absolutely. So those I'm still seeing a few of them too. I think that in a 24-hour news cycle with 17 million news channels, people need something to talk about. And suddenly someone gets wind that people are playing board games again, not really necessarily understanding that this is a trend that has been going on for a good 10 years. So yes, board gaming has been on the rise for 10 years, 15 years even. Much more so recently in the past 5 years. And yes, it's still growing. It's absolutely still growing. There is especially here in the States, there is a giant population of people who, when you say board game, they think Monopoly, Sorry, Risk. And that has been changing, really with more word of mouth than anything else. People are getting introduced to these things from their friends, and realizing, hey, there's this whole new other world of board games out there, and they are they're sort of turning, tuning in to that hobby. And I don't really see too much of a slowdown for it. I mean, it will go sort of, peaks and valleys, but generally speaking, the trajectory is going to be up, and I think it's going to be up for quite a while.
Yeah, so does that mean more games? Does that mean more players?
Right now, it means too many more games. We are experiencing yes, there. Can you have too many more games? I can have too many games. The problem I think that the industry is experiencing right now is we have a glut of stuff, and I think that consumers can see that as well. I'm hearing it a lot more recently than I heard 5 years ago. There's just too many good games out right now, and that's actually a problem. You have a certain amount of budget that you can dedicate to your hobby, and suddenly there's all these different really good choices available, and now that is a kind of a point of frustration. We have a very large industry. It's growing all the time. However, we are currently having a larger number of people putting product into that industry. They see that, of all of the stuff that is of all the entertainment options that people have, the bright shining light, because of the articles you mentioned and because of other things, is really on board gaming and social gaming and getting together and things like that. So they say, hey, there's money to be made here. Half of it is that. The other half is Kickstarter and some other things. There's a lot of people saying, well, I can make a board game too. Very similar to the sort of the role-playing glut of the 90s. I can make a role-playing game too. And so, or really the 2000s anyway. So right now we are forced with dealing with too much stuff. And, those of you who know our store know that we really try to cater to the board gaming market. I'd like to think that we have an excellent inventory, a wide-ranging inventory. But even now, and I wish I could carry it all, but I can't. There are things that I just have to make a decision, or Margaret, our manager, has to make a decision saying, this game there's not space on the shelf for this. We don't anticipate that this game is going to turn, which means how many times it's going to sell over a year. We need a game to sell a certain number of copies in a year's time to be worth the shelf space that it has. There's some hard choices to be made. I've only got so much money to spend on inventory. And so more so now than when I first opened the store 6-something years ago, is that I am looking at new releases and saying, yeah, let's bring everything in. I have to go, yes, no, yes, 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 no, which is unfortunate. We counter that with being able to do, just-in-time ordering as much as possible. We rely on pre-orders that way. If there is a game that you are interested in and you want it, pre-order it, because that way we know that you want it. Because if no one tells us that they want something, then we don't think anybody wants something. I mean, it really comes down to that sometimes. So hopefully that helps answer the question.
Yeah, so something about that, there's a lot of different people making games, yes. You said, and just kind of on that last point of, if you want it, tell us, or we can't get everything. I see a lot of maybe designers, maybe developers, maybe, I don't think so much publishers.
Mm-hmm. Just checking and see what my dog is destroying
that have
there.
It sounded like a piece of paper.
It looks like a Star Wars Destiny rulebook.
Nice.
I have 3 of them. Okay.
It sounds like there are games out there that we can't get through our regular channels. How does that happen?
Yes.
Why do people make that decision? Is that a recent trend?
Well, I mean, you look at things like exclusivity, and here are you talking about things like people making things available through Kickstarter, or something like
through Kickstarter and through my own webpage. You can only get it through my webpage, not like Cards Against Humanity, but kind of like we see it with the smaller games.
Sure. So Cards Against Humanity, that is a company that chose to not go into distribution. If they chose that they only want to sell it themselves, they want to maximize their own profit. The great really unwritten secret, or the secret that everyone knows, is that when I bring in Cards Against Humanity, I'm not afraid to say this, I'm just like a consumer. I buy it off of Amazon and I mark it up because that's the only way I can get it. But I have so much demand for the game that I have chosen to do that, and I don't like it, but I'm supplying a demand. But that's an exception. The other one is, just as I have trouble deciding what does and does not make it onto my shelves, distributors are the same way, and even more so. Distributors are getting hit every day with people saying, I've got this great new thing, and they go, okay, we'll put it in the pile with everything else, and we'll try to get to it as soon as possible, and they have to decide, I need to sell 4 copies of a game. They need to sell 400 copies of a game. To make it worthwhile to them. And if they don't think they can do that, if the customers aren't telling the retailers and the retailers aren't telling them, then that's going to be a problem. Then they're going to say, nope, no, there's no interest for this. There goes another Destiny rulebook. This is hilarious. Okay, well. New puppy. Now, so that forces people who've made a game, either through Kickstarter or they're on their own, to go direct. And that is either by choice, because they want to maximize their profit, because they didn't build in the costs for going through distribution, which is very true. They don't actually, a lot of folks who are new to this industry don't do the homework to find out how the industry works. And the distribution chain is the best way to get your stuff into a store, but there's a cost to it. They need, everyone who touches your game needs to make a little bit of money from it. And so if you didn't build in enough value into your game, into the retail price, that you can't afford to sell it for the amount that you need to sell it to get it into stores, then that's a problem, and it's not going to happen. What has mostly been going on lately, for the past, there's always been this sort of discussion about exclusivities. Products go to only this distributor and only that distributor. The big one that you probably know about is Asmodee North America, which includes Fantasy Flight Games, Plaid Hat Games, Catan, Days of Wonder. I'm sure I'm forgetting some other ones. that they only go through this one distributor now named Alliance. That was a major cause for concern because I want to be able to, if I'm looking for a pair of shoes, I want to go to a lot of shoe stores to find the pair of shoes that I'm looking for. If I can only go to one store and they're out, too bad. The flip side of that is, if this one source is out, then I know that everyone is out. Then that adds a little bit of inventory, juggling reduction, if that makes any sense. So the Asmodee thing, that came with some minuses and some pluses. I know that I only have to go to one stop to get these things. I know that they have, initiated some extra programs to make sure that stores like mine, who sell a lot of their product, are not given preferential treatment. That's not it. But they are recognized. For example, with that deal, brick and mortar stores are in a different tier than stores that only primarily sell online and stores that primarily are basically big box stores. Each one of these segments has a different pricing structure, a different support structure, and the one that goes to brick and mortar stores is the most advantageous for that business, because Asmodee, Fantasy Flight, the rest of them have all realized that we add a tremendous amount of value to their product that is not just being able to sell it. And selling a thing is a lot different from supporting a thing. And so we are able to provide, obviously, our expert staff. We're able to provide organized play, shelf space, that and featuring, and just all that we add to the hobby as opposed to sell a commodity. And so they appreciate that, and they show that appreciation through programs that became available through this exclusivity. Another one example would be Plan B Games. Plan B Games is owned by the person who used to own Z-Man Games. That's the one that is now the one I wasn't thinking of. They're under Asmodee now. But Plan B, they're out of Canada, and they make the two big ones that you've heard of. They make Century Spice Road and the new one called Azul, Azul, which is a beautiful little abstract game, really good. They're making some really nice stuff. I can only get them through one distributor, and it's not one of the major ones. It's one of the sort of second tier. They're sort of right. They're kind of a 1.5. They're right in between the really big ones and the next tier ones. Fortunately for me, we were already set up with that supplier. Unfortunately for a lot of retailers who were not, they had to scramble in order to. I never want to have to sign up with one supplier just to get one thing. That discourages me from buying that thing. So that's a disadvantage. The advantage that Asmodee has with their distribution exclusivity is everyone pretty much already is hooked up with these folks, and you kind of need to. They have so many products. I mean, a vast majority of my sales, vast, but a large chunk of our annual sales comes from this umbrella company. You think about all the games that you own and play from Fantasy Flight and Z-Man and Catan and Days of Wonder and all those guys. That's a big chunk of our industry. Is that a monopoly? No, I don't think so. There's so much variance out there. There's so much stuff. It's big. I mean, they're the McDonald's of food. The analogy is strong. They're on every corner, and they're if you want to go out and get a hamburger, chances are, of all the hamburgers being sold in the United States today, most of them are being sold at McDonald's. And that, does McDonald's have a monopoly on fast food? No. But they are the big major player. So that's kind of the analogy that I kind of throw there, and I kind of went off on a tangent.
No, that's good.
So the unfortunate thing with Plan B is that they go to this one place and they only really have two titles that I care about. I think they only have those two titles, as a matter of fact. Fortunately for us, we're able to capitalize on that, and because we have such a strong board gaming community here in Madison, I know that I can bring in a giant pile of Century Spice Road and I know I can be confident in the fact that they're going to turn. They're going to sell, which is what I need to happen. So,
yeah, that's interesting. So, basically, you talked about the merger, would you call it, or acquisition, or
yeah. Let me check on the dog. Dogs are on the table, destroying. There's confetti under the table.
I've got my foot on it.
He's good. He's a new puppy. He's really cute. I'll bring him up here at some point if I can. Anyway.
Yeah, so Asmodee, FFG, this big publisher.
Umbrella company.
Yeah,
right.
umbrella company of publishing games. I'm going to put you on the spot. You talked about positives and negatives.
Mm-hmm.
Overall, would you say it's a good thing for the industry? Too early to tell?
If you had asked me a year ago, I would have said too early to tell. Now that I've experienced this, fortunately,
it
is a year later. And I think overall, and I can only say that for me personally, for my store, on a selfish level, yeah, this has been a good deal for us. We've been able to get better allocations. We've been able to get better support. We are able to buy the stuff more efficiently, and that is very helpful. Because that basically helps me make more profit from this stuff, which we need to do. So yeah, I do think that this move has been a good one. I absolutely understand. Now he's scratching himself. Hey, Balin, come here. I'm doing it here. Come here, you big dope. This is Balin. Say hi, Balin. He is the new puppy. Okay, there we go. Now, go destroy something else. Okay. So, where was I? Yeah, this has been a good thing for me, for us, for our store. It's been a good thing for a lot of stores. I think it has been a disadvantage for stores that did not have a board gaming focus. And I will say that by and large, stores have become more and more board gaming focused in the past several years. For all the reasons we just talked about earlier, board games is an aspect of our industry that is growing. What's he getting into now?
He's looking for a board game to play.
Okay, sounds good. A little stinker. So not every store is I think reaping the benefits of this because they were not prepared for it. They were not prepared for how the industry is changing and evolving and shifting, not away from things like Magic, but kind of, in a different, the trajectory is going in slightly different directions. The growth is happening over here, and for the last 20 something years, all the growth was over here. And now suddenly everyone is, all the focus is over here than this thing that is going up. So they, those folks I think are in a spot where they have to be a little more careful about how they are approaching and growing and evolving and adapting to the way that any industry works, and ours is right now. Every industry, everything goes on a curve, of interest to non-interest to growth and shrinkage. It goes all over the place.
So you mentioned Magic, and I just wanted to say, like, with this show, we're talking about the industry as a whole.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, we focus on board games, real board games, but we have, other things of the industry as well. And I think with this show, we want to talk about those as well.
Yeah.
So what would you say are the cornerstones of the tabletop gaming industry, I guess we would call it?
Sure.
Probably board games?
The categories? Yeah, the board games and card games, which I kind of lump together into one sort of tabletop game kind of thing. Role-playing games, where it all started, at least here in the States. Miniatures games, Warhammer and that kind of thing. And collectible card games or collectible games. That's not necessarily card games. A game like Dice Masters falls into that category, which is just collectible dice, HeroClix and things like that. In the collectible genre, the big kahuna in the world is still Magic. It will be forever. I can't see why that would change. For our store, Destiny is very huge. We sell just as much, if not more, Destiny on a new release than we do Magic. Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon are the big ones, right? There are a lot of other games out there. There are a lot of collectible games that we just choose not to carry for the reasons I talked about earlier. I think there's a Final Fantasy game, and there's a lot of Japanese games and some other ones. I tell you, we're gonna give it a try. Coming early next year is the Munchkin collectible card game. They're working on that right now. It's got some good names. Kevin Wilson, I think, is attached to it. So we're gonna give it a shot. It could be fun. It could be awesome. It could be not great.
And dip into all sorts of things.
We're gonna see what that's all about. I mean, on a person, we sell a lot of Munchkin. Munchkin has been popular forever, and it continues to go. The most recent, there was a Shakespeare Munchkin, which was great, and it just came out a couple weeks ago. And that's, hey, we have a dog and we have a cat. This is Lucky. Okay, Lucky. There we go. I personally am not a fan of the game. I don't, I played it out. I've kind of got my fun out of it. But it's still a great game, and I am happy to teach it to anyone and things like that. The Munchkin collectible card game, let's give it a shot, because that could be really interesting. So you'll see that pretty soon, some starter sets and some boosters and all that kind of stuff. Magic is in a weird place right now. Those of you who kind of look around the industry and news and things like that, there's a tiny little bit of Chicken Littling going on right now with Magic. Wizards of the Coast, in my opinion, and I share that opinion with some other people and others not, has been releasing too much stuff in the past year and a half or so. I think that they see, just as anything, again, like I said before, has its peaks and valleys of interest. Magic was on a fairly rapid growth spurt for the past 6 years. And about last year, sometime 2 years ago, that started to plateau and started to dip. Is Magic going to die? No. No. There is, Magic is still one of the most popular games in the world. It isn't going to go anywhere. But interest has been waning a little bit. And Wizards of the Coast has been meeting that sort of challenge with throwing more product out. Here comes the cat again.
Dog's gone. My turn to play.
That's the cat. It was a good idea to do this at my house. There's a snake. My son has a snake.
That's right.
His name is Monty. He's a python. And there's a fish over there. We got a whole zoo.
When we see the snake come out,
then it's done. Yeah, that would be a problem. Okay, so Magic is so Wizards of the Coast has started coming out with lots more product. For those of you who know the game, we've had two Modern Masters, iconic Masters sets, which are basically reprints of really big popular cards from the history of the game. Two of those coming out in a year, and that's not an inexpensive thing. Has been, is it a cash grab? No, I don't think so. I think it's WotC seeing that they need to sort of normalize a couple of things. In my humble opinion, I think that WotC is starting to see that the secondary market is not the future of the game.
So we're going to see an LCG model.
No, that'll never happen. If Magic moved to an LCG model, if there was a Magic 2.0 and they made LCG, okay, other retailers would yell at me for this, but I mean, the whole world would get rich from that. I mean, I would sell 1 million of them. Hasbro would sell 1 million of them. Wizards of the Coast is part of Hasbro. But the entire secondary market would collapse. The singles market would collapse. And it would be catastrophic for a lot of retailers. So that's why that probably won't happen. I do think there's a bit of a bubble going on with Magic right now. I think that bubble might burst pretty soon. Well, next year is going to see what happens. I think there's been a lot of retailers who lived and died on that game see that they couldn't really make it anymore and had to make some very quick adaptations, and those who couldn't unfortunately had to go under. There may be some more culling of that going on. those who have been able to sort of see the writing on the wall, see the way that the industry is shifting, adapt, and diversify. Diversification is what we all aspire for. I can share that in a lot of stores, especially early on, not now, but it would not be uncanny for a store to have their dog wants to go outside. Be right back. It would not be uncanny for. There you go. Hi. It would not be uncanny for a store to have over 50% or more, 75% of their sales be Magic the Gathering and related products. That's putting all your eggs in one basket. I can say I just ran some numbers. I think our percentage of Magic is somewhere around 15%, 12%, something like that. I think no. I'm sorry, 10. It's closer to 10 this year. It was more 12 or 13 last year. So you can see that it's I'm bored. Our sales have gone up this year. Thank you. Magic sales have gone down. It's one of the few categories that have sort of gone down for us, but it's still huge. I mean, 10% of my annual sales is not insignificant. So for some stores where Magic is the cake, and if the cake goes away, you starve. For me, it's the frosting on the cake. It's a delicious frosting. I don't want it to go away. And I think what has helped us is our emphasis on the more casual play, the casual market, newer players, friendly play. We don't fill our back room with Magic events, except for occasionally, pre-releases and things like that. But our weekly Magic events, we're not filling the place up, but we are filling the place up with a style of player that I really enjoy hosting. Friendly, competitive is fine, but good sports, good winners, good losers, helpful. It's a real good community, and that's the kind of thing that we really sort of, strive for. If you want to play Smash Mouth Magic, there's places around town to do that, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's certainly a market for that. We have just chosen not to embrace that one. Sort of on a tangent of that is singles sales. Those who play Magic and know about the singles market where you can buy and sell individual cards. This whole secondary market, that's the one I was talking about. We have made the service available through partnering with one of the other stores in town to help, supply us with inventory, and we, can sell you individual Magic cards. I just made the decision that we are not going to be buying Magic cards. They're just for a lot of reasons, had to do with basically return on investment. It's a lot of time and a lot of energy for my staff, and it did not generate a whole lot of revenue to counter that. And so acquiring Magic cards that we then help this partner of ours bump their inventory, we're not going to do that part anymore, but we're still going to happily sell Magic singles. That is a nice little am I making a lot of money off of that? No, not like a lot of stores do. Very little, but it's that is a good service that I think that we need to have. And so we're able to provide that. I think I've talked Magic enough.
Well,
I don't know.
I that's interesting because I do want to talk about Magic maybe a little more if that's okay, because you talked about the secondary market and you explained what that is. So I think we know what that is, but that's fascinating because Magic is the only game that has that. Really, kind of the only thing
in a major way. I mean, any collectible game does have a secondary market.
Not something where I can go out there and say I'm going to open up a Magic singles store. And I can, if I work at it, I can make it happen.
Do it, yeah. I mean, the problem is inventory. So there are two ways to make money from Magic the Gathering. You sell sealed product, or you sell open product. Sealed product is pretty much what we do. You buy a pack of Magic, you go to an event, and you get stuff. You get a box. There's a cellophane. There's a wrapper. You have to open it up. The secondary market is things that are essentially used. The thing has been opened. If I open up a pack of Magic, I may see there is a street value, a secondary value on that pack. And I open it up and I look at the cards, and if I get some great legendary, ultra rare thing, then that card, even though I bought that pack for $4, I suddenly have opened up a card that on the secondary market I could sell to a store for $20, and they will then turn around and sell it to someone else for 40 or something like that. Supply and demand of individual cards in a collectible market. That is the whole secondary thing. And there are stores out there that have made a tremendous amount of money on that. You really have to know the game. You really have to dedicate staff to that. It's not something that we have a focus on because, I mean, while I certainly know the game and collectible card games was quite literally my life back in the 90s when I was a game designer, that's not my personal focus, and I didn't want to dedicate resources to that, to creating that type of an environment. Not environment, but just that kind of product selection and things like that. And plus, there are stores here in town that do it better and always will. I know that going in. I am not a Magic guy, and I could hire that talent. I could bring that in, but at the in our current sort of in where we are as a company, as in the directions that we're growing and shifting, the folks that I'm bringing in do need to have a more diversified thing. I could hire 3 people to just open Magic cards and make that happen, but that's just not something that I necessarily want to do. I could do it. I could make money from it. I probably could. But I just, that's just not where I want us to focus, because then you get into whole other things like just space and storage and security and things like that. And like I said, there are several stores here in the area that already do it and do it well, and I don't really need or want to compete with that. But yeah, you can absolutely do that. You can, if there's an area that is underserved or not served, that is kind of what led to some of this bubble that we're currently hitting. Is in the past 10 years, especially in the past 10 years, really anybody with a few $1,000s and a dumpy little storefront in the cheap neighborhood can open a Magic shop and just a clubhouse and just open packs and sell singles and make a decent living. The problem is that security is evaporating. The ability to do that and have a secure job in that, and it's like being a stockbroker. It really
Right.
is.
Well, the interesting thing about that is we talk about how the board game industry is growing and still growing,
Mm-hmm.
and the tabletop gaming industry. But so would you say that Magic is declining in player base or in quality? Is it Wizards? Is it just people aren't really interested in it? Why is Magic not growing with the rest of the industry?
There are a lot of people that have a lot of opinions about that, and I don't feel that I am qualified enough to give a good opinion on what the reason is. I can tell you what some of the reasons I have heard are.
Yeah.
One of the big reasons that I have heard is that the game has gotten just too well. First of all, let's back up. I mentioned earlier that there's just too much product coming out.
Right.
I think one of the reasons has been, those of you who like to collect a game, we as gamers, we are completists. We want to have a game, and an expansion comes out, we need that expansion, and special metal coins come out, we need those metal coins. And that's, there's a whole bunch of us out there that we just need to have all this stuff. We may never even use all this stuff, but I gotta have it. And a collectible game, that is what that game is all about. People needing to have all this stuff and chasing all this stuff. And when so much stuff comes out, then those people who need to have everything become very frustrated very fast, because it's very difficult for them to get all that stuff. There's only so much time and only so much money that they can invest in that aspect of their hobby. So that is one thing. So some people, there. I think it's people are always leaving the game, and people are always coming into the game. Any game you can think of, people are leaving it and coming into it, and eventually, enough people leave it, and not enough people come into it that the game sort of dies off, right? A quick tangent. In my area, in our area, the Pathfinder role-playing game is a great example of that. When Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition came out, the whole world was skeptical. Turns out it's a really good game, and a lot of people started going to 5th edition. They all started leaving Pathfinder, and not very many people were going into Pathfinder. And on our shelves, the Pathfinder selection, in a matter of 2 years, changed from this whole big selection, and we carry everything, to we carry all the hardcover books, and they're sitting down here. That is supply and demand. That is, the demand has gone down, and so our supply goes down with it. With Magic, that is similar. People leave the game, but not as many people are coming into the game. What we try to do is, we're a store that really kind of caters to that new player, and so we haven't been hit by that so badly. But we, there's again, because of all the stuff, or because of the intimidation factor, or just because people are playing Hearthstone now, who knows? There's just not as many people getting into the game. There's no product that actually says Magic the Gathering starter set. Wizard of the Coast.
That's true.
Yeah. Don't get me started. So that's one thing. Another thing that I hear a lot is that the standard format, which is the current, the format that you normally play with the most recently available packs and sets, has gotten boring and uninteresting. A lot of card shops would complain that the glut of product means that the value of their cards has reduced, and so those people who get into the game as a stockbroker, as a speculation marketer, are not seeing as much value in the game. Fine. I care the least about those people. They're not in it for the fun. They're in it for some other reasons.
Well, that's fine for them, maybe. I'll add the disclaimer I'll add the disclaimer for Brian too. He had said he's not a Magic expert, and he is just reflecting what he has heard.
Yes. All the opinions are those of me and me only, not of I'm Board Games Incorporated. We're not incorporated. LLC. I'm Board LLC. Anyway. So those are some of the things that I have heard. I think the true answer is a little mix of all those things. Personally, at our store, I think that the glut of just in board games, there's so much stuff coming out that people just can't keep up, and so they stop trying. Which is unfortunate. Is Magic ever going to go away? I said this earlier. No, Magic is never going to go away. There's always going to be a way for you to go to a game store and buy a pack of Magic. If you love the game and you want to play the game is still great, and it's still not going to go away. And now if you once you get into a certain level, if you're playing kitchen table Magic is what most of the world plays. They're not into the metagame and the values and all that other kind of stuff and preliminary Pro Tour qualifiers and all that kind of thing. They just want to sit, there's two guys that come to the store almost every day on their lunch break. Each of them buys one pack of Magic, and they do a little pack battle, and then they go back to work. I mean, that is, in my opinion, the great the great thing about Magic the Gathering is you can just sit down and play with any cards from any era, and you can still have fun. So that will never stop, which is good, because I like that frosting.
Just myself, I did that the other weekend, and I was playing. I'm like,
this game's good.
This is why I played this game.
Yeah, and then but because you're a completist, you're like, but I can't get into it because then I'm going to go down that rabbit hole, and that's a really hard thing that I have to do, and we all have to do, is to say, play as much of a game that's fun, and continue to play that game to the level that it's fun. And if there's a level that turns that game from a fun to a responsibility, well, then you're not having any fun anymore. Turning off the need that we as gamers have to not need to have everything and just enjoy what we have. Good example, the Star Wars Imperial Assault board game. Great game. It's basically Descent with Star Wars, dungeon crawl Star Wars-y kind of game. The app is releasing today. I just posted about it on Facebook and Twitter. That's awesome, and it'll work with just the core set. And that game enjoys lots of expansions, all these extra quests and extra figures, and you can collect them all, and they'll all work in the app, but you don't have to. And knowing, this is something that I've really, because you go into my store and you look around, I own all that stuff. Until you buy it away from me, it's mine. And it's really easy for me to go
Also here.
over here, and it's, admit that you have a problem. And it's really easy for me to go, I want this, and just take it home. That's don't do that. I got it. The little guy in my head goes, don't do that. That's not how you pay your mortgage. And so, and I think about, okay, is this, at what point is this game gonna just be too much stuff for me to have fun with it anymore? Now, if you want to buy it all, that's great. I'll sell you all of it. But if you want to stop at a certain point, I respect that. You have, because I know that you've got a gaming budget, and it's going to be dedicated to something. So more people, I think, are dedicating their budgets to new things, new experiences, as opposed to just continuing with the old. And that, again, I think is another thing about Magic, is I think a lot of Magic players especially are looking around going, there's a lot of other games out there, and they all look pretty great. So instead of me devoting all of my resources, all of my budget, all of my time to a game, maybe I'm going to spread out a little bit and realize that I don't have to have all the things to have fun. I can have fun with what I've got, and I can have fun over here and over here and over here as well. I don't know if that helps answer it.
Yeah. Well, I want to say one more thing about Magic, just to kind of tie it back to our overall theme of the industry. And I think the focus point that still sticks out in my mind is you had said that when Wizards is looking at it, okay, so we kind of talked about, well, what role do they play in this slight decline?
Mm-hmm.
I think we would agree. You said you think they are looking at the secondary market and thinking that's not all it's cracked up to be. But
that is pure speculation.
Okay,
only my opinion.
Well, because you said that there'd be more money if they maybe tried a different model. So
yes.
I'm just curious, what is stopping them, do you think, from doing that? And you said obviously the secondary market, those stores and those people who run it would collapse, and that would be a bad thing.
Yeah,
I wouldn't want to see it happen. I don't think Wizards is making that choice out of the goodness of their heart, though. So, unless I'm wrong, if somebody is here on Wizards, please correct me.
Please correct us, yeah, and that would be a huge scoop because they don't talk about this kind of stuff. Again, I'm speculating, and I'm making some assumptions here. I think Wizards of the Coast is part of Hasbro, right? But Wizards of the Coast is also one of Hasbro's biggest successes. Magic the Gathering is their number one product. And we're talking Hasbro here. That was last year. I'm not sure if it's the same thing this year or not. But so they have some mutual respect from each other.
Sure.
At the same time, they have shareholders. It's a publicly traded company. They got to make money.
Yep. Okay.
But if they made some radical change and half of the game stores in the world collapsed, that's a terrible PR thing that reduces their revenue significantly. And it puts a stain on their game and their reputation and their
player
name.
Base unhappy.
Absolutely, yeah. And people will leave the game in droves. So they really are kind of stuck with what they've got.
Okay.
The other thing is but they are making some other things. There has been a lot of squawking amongst some retailers about the preponderance of some of these special sets and things like Iconic Masters, starting to find them in big box stores like Target and Walmart. And that's where a lot of the Chicken Littling is going on. Is I see this in Walmart here now. What am I going to do? And as an aside, if you're afraid of Walmart, you're doing it wrong. But that's just my personal opinion. Because you add so much more value to the game. So I think Wizards is doing some things. They're bringing they're opening their channels. Frankly, I'm surprised they didn't do things like putting more of their stuff into the big box stores. I'm surprised that didn't happen years ago. And I think it didn't happen because they really are. No, a big box store will sell anything that they can sell. Right. Absolutely. But I think that they do have a lot of respect for the player, for the retailers out there.
That's good to know. Yeah.
They do. There is no company at all, even close, that provides its retailers with the best support. I mean, if you look, for those of you who know the game, they provide us with so much promotional material for free that every so often I hear a retailer will get frustrated. It's like, oh, they don't care anything about us. That is absolutely hogwash. I can't think of any company that gives so much to the people who promote their game. Friday Night Magic cards and all these pre-release specials and standees and promo cards and packs and things like that. And all of that is designed to keep the excitement going. And I and recently, smartly, they're trying to do things which are trying to inject new players into the game, which is really what they need to do. That's where they need to put their focus.
Yeah.
So why don't they do that? Because they would ruin themselves. Would it be cool if they did? For me, selfishly, yes. That would be better for I'm bored games and family fun. Would that be better for the game and the industry? Absolutely not. And so I sort of pipe dream it and go, oh, that would be really interesting. But at the same time, it's like, oh, that would be a really bad thing for all of us.
Well, I think it's good to know that it's not just them thinking about themselves, but I think, my impression from your comments, and it makes sense that they do care about the industry too.
They care
about their community and players.
Tremendously, but they are a business and they have to make money. And if that means that they spread their stuff out and they don't make us, a lot of Magic stores specifically have enjoyed sort of this super exclusive club status for a long time. And I think that's made a lot of us complacent and a little spoiled. And I think, again, this is all me speculating, but I think that if WotC has to spread their product out, if I'm not selling as much as I used to, they got to sell it somewhere. So here is some other ways to do it. I mean, and now, Walmart has always carried Magic, and Target has always carried Magic. But what we're seeing is some of those more special sets, Iconic Masters and things like that, finding their way onto those shelves, which used to be exclusive to us. And I think that finding things that were exclusive to us, no longer exclusive to us, has made a lot of retailers and some people in the industry a little twitchy. And my response to that is different markets. They're different audiences. They're different customers.
Yep.
They're not your people. They, don't worry about it. So
well, I want to move on
the next
from
year's
Magic
gonna be interesting.
for the last 15 minutes or so. Meme Birdman did say that there's a barrier of entry as a non-Magic player to get into the community.
Absolutely.
And I think it ties into your starter set thing too, which is another good point. So thanks
yeah,
for that.
and one of the things I can comment on that really, really well is that, there absolutely is a barrier of entry to be competitive. If you want to go into this game and be competitive about it, there are two ways to go about it. You just buy a deck. You go to us and you have you net deck it. You look up a cool deck and you go to us and you buy the individual cards on that deck. Or you collect all the cards, or you do a lot of trading and things like that. One of the big reasons that we really embrace that casual market is to break down those barriers as much as possible. But it's really hard because this is a game that's been around for over 20 years. And as we saw with Legends of the Five Rings, right, that had even a worse barrier to entry. And now they have this brand new set and brand new starters and things like that. And that barrier to entry has mostly gone away, although there's still a little bit there. But anyway, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, thanks.
Here comes the cat. There's
So-
a puma going in front of the camera. Come here, you.
For this last 10 minutes, let's really quick. What can you tell us about? Would you rather? Because we talked about board games a lot. We talked about Magic a lot. Miniatures or D&D with the industry as it is on the rise. Where do they fit in? Because it's interesting to see that we have a glut of board games. We have a glut of Magic, and they're going in different directions. Board games still on the rise, so maybe we're facing a bubble, as they say, with both of those. But Magic is maybe already feeling the throes of that, and they will recover. But what about miniatures or role playing? Just pick one for now.
Bubbles can come. I'm going to talk about bubbles first.
Okay.
Bubbles can come from both directions. There's a bubble. The concept of a bubble is there's this entity that is straining, and at some point that bubble's going to pop, and the thing is going to hurt because of it. Right? It's going to collapse or something. So that and pretend that there's a bubble going up, and there's a pin on it on each side. Right? And one side is too much stuff, and one side is not enough interest. Okay, and sometimes that pin is coming from both directions. Sometimes it's just too much stuff. Sometimes it's so So that bubble can be caused by the manufacturer, or it can be caused from the consumers. Now, with miniatures is a tough nut to crack. It really is. Miniature players, and we're both them. Goodness knows we both love minis games. Minis games are hard to carry, and they're hard to sell, and they're hard to support because there's so much stuff. And minis players tend to stick to a game, a couple of games, and live and breathe that game. But as soon as that game becomes popular enough and big enough, then the barrier to entry for a lot of those games becomes bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's this vicious cycle. The biggest growth in minis games last year was Warhammer 40,000. The new 8th edition had completely turned 40K around. It evaporated the barrier to entry. You can download the rules today. It's 8 pages. It's only 8 pages, right? You can buy any unit.
We can give it to you free if you want. They gave us a ton of them.
We can. So all you got to do is buy the things you want, and you can play. Something like Rune Wars, which I am, I'm staring at a box of it right now over on the other side of the camera. I think that game is great. I think it's awesome. We had a lot of interest right away, and that interest has waned. We have some very dedicated Rune Wars players.
We
still do. But not as many as we did. And we don't have a whole lot of people getting into the game. Rune Wars is a game that works, I think is going to work a lot like X-Wing did. X-Wing, we have a tremendous amount of X-Wing players, but we didn't at first. X-Wing came out a few years ago. It was huge, and then it just died. And then slowly, it rose up again. And I think the reason for that is that the product selection took a long time to get interesting. Now you can go to our X-Wing selection, and you can get all kinds of ships, and you can make pretty much whatever you want. When the game first started, you had 8 things to choose from, or so. And that made the game a little dull. Rune Wars, I think, is in that period right now, where the 4th faction was just released, the Orcs. And so as more and more stuff comes out,
there's a problem of too little stuff now.
I'm saying
when our whole theme has been too much stuff. It's just interesting.
Yeah, I mean,
is that the case with some miniatures games?
It's hard to get a miniatures game to launch because you need so many things to make it a viable product. I think Star Wars Legion is going to suffer from that a little bit. The nice thing about Star Wars Legion is they're going out of the gate with a lot of very cool stuff right away, and it's Star Wars, and it's not like X-Wing, and it's not like Rune Wars, which have all these little widgets and all this kind of stuff. Legion is set up as a good old pure 40K-esque minis game, and that's going to appeal to the minis market. The minis market and the painting market and the player market and the board gamer market are all very different, and they all have different things that they're looking for in a game. Star Wars Legion, I think, checks off a lot of those boxes. It's a regular good old minis game with rulers and stuff like that. It's got things you can paint. The big advantage of X-Wing is that stuff is already pre-painted. There's a whole lot of people who don't like to play X-Wing because the stuff's pre-painted, and they'll actually repaint their minis and things like that. So minis is really tough, and it's hard for us to do a minis game. Guild Ball is a good example of that. Guild Ball is a game that is a fun little soccer game. It's like Blood Bowl with soccer, and it's actually rulers and all that kind of stuff. We have a small, but you talk about just about every one of our minis customer bases, it's small and dedicated, and there's not really a minis game out there that is large and enthusiastic. It's because every game appeals to a certain type of player, and so you've got a fairly small amount of people who actually want to do all the stuff that comes along with a minis game, painting and assembling and all that kind of stuff. By the way, you never really have to paint your figures to have fun with the game. He does. I don't. Where's I going to go with that? See, so you've got that group of people who are interested in that kind of thing. And then from there, they get cut up into these little segments of people who like World War II, or a game like Malifaux, or a game like Rune Wars, or a game like X-Wing, or a game like Blood Bowl, which is really a board game, or 40K and things like that. At our store, we have these little tiny sections, and we can get whatever you want. If I carried everything for every game, the whole store would be full of minis. And that's, again, every little piece, every little square foot in my store has to generate enough income to make the stuff that's sitting on that spot, worth putting there. And with minis games, that's extremely hard to do. So we try to keep the essentials and the basics, and then we can, and because ACD and Alliance are a day away from us for shipping, then we can order stuff in for you and try to make that, kind of have the best of both worlds. Role playing.
Well, let's skip role playing for now.
Okay.
We only have 5 minutes, and I don't think we'll be able to talk to him. And instead, let's do a couple of questions.
Oh yeah, we have
because
questions.
they actually mentioned on things that you had just talked about. So Jacob said, "Is there a happy spot for a happy spot of stuff, as well as a best fit trend line for new stuff as a function of time for optimal success?" And I think what he's talking about, correct me if I'm wrong, Jacob, but is when you mentioned when a game comes out, it's not popular, then there becomes more stuff. Maybe there's an initial surge, a dip, and then there's a horseshoe. I think that's what he's talking about. So what would you say? Is there
a typical one?
Yeah.
No. Well, I'd have to think about that a little bit. The life cycle for most games is it's new, it sells, and then it's like this. It goes up and then it goes down fast, and then it's sort of either going to go like this or it's going to go like this. It very rarely goes and then back up like that. Usually if it does go back up like that is because the people who sort of knew about it got into the game and they bought it and they're enjoying it, and then word of mouth brings it back up. And then you have a game that is popular because of its quality. I mean, every game is popular because of quality, but overwhelmingly so. This is a really good game. Patchwork is I'm looking at Patchwork right now. It's a little 2-player game about making a quilt. Who's going to play a game like that? And
everyone.
Now, yeah, because it comes out in like Patchwork. All right, we'll bring in a couple, and then someone plays it, and you go, this is one of the best 2-player games to come out in the last few years. And so then through us a little bit saying, you need to try this, and then that getting into hands and that word of mouth spreading, and they tell a friend and they play it. And now it's now instead of, we'll try a couple of copies, now we bring in several whenever we restock that game, which is not common for us. Other games, just we think they're going to be great, and they're just not. They sell to the people who knew about it and who are excited about it, and just no one else is. Some games we never bring in. It's just, it's sad but true. Some games just haven't earned the spot in our shelf, either because no one was interested, no one asked about them. We just don't have a good feel for them. The way that they're sold will do it if they're too exclusive and things like that. I don't know if I'm answering the question or not.
I think so. I think you're confirming that horseshoe is almost the pattern for success for that game, which is interesting because it's almost a leap of faith.
It absolutely is.
Only a company like Fantasy Flight that's so big can do that with a game like Rune Wars. So
Fantasy Flight has the resources to stick with it.
Right.
We're gonna give this its best try, and eventually they will keep going, or they'll decide to just let it kind of falter and die on the vine.
Right. And so that is the pattern of success almost, which is interesting.
Yep.
So Jeff had an interesting comment too that sorry, I'm trying to find it here. Aren't miniatures and board games Venn diagram circles coming closer together, with Cool Mini or Not as a specific example? And like you mentioned, Blood Bowl does that.
Yeah.
Shadespire does that, where it's a board game and miniatures
There is
game.
a very big difference in my mind between a miniatures game and a board game with miniatures. Cool Mini or Not, except for the new Ice and Fire Kickstarter that we are waiting for, makes board games with miniatures. Zombicide will work just as well without the plastics. And if you really want to get down to it, miniatures games don't need anything. You can use wads of paper. These are my Space Marines. You can use Legos. Yeah, absolutely. So now is the interest. So what I see though is an interest in pieces of plastic. Do those pieces of plastic get painted? Almost never.
Which is fine.
Which is fine. You can still play. You can still play. What's the big game with everyone dies? You died, and you gotta get through
Souls?
Dark Souls. You can still play Dark Souls. It's got some amazing miniatures, and it's cool. There's a cool factor. There's a toy value. You've got the things on the board, and they look awesome, and they help immerse you into the game. There's some verisimilitude there. So it adds reality to the concept of the abstract of the board game. It helps you kind of get into the theme even more. So I see more and more games with a miniatures element, and they're really just, when I say, but I don't like to think of them as miniatures, as really fancy game pieces. As opposed to a miniatures game, which is more, it's got historical provenance, where I've got my army. It's really more of a war game. It's an army game, and I've got my soldiers, and you've got your soldiers, and now we're harkening back to H.G. Wells' Little Wars and things like that. And so they've got slightly different backgrounds and provenances. The interesting thing that I'm seeing, especially with a lot of Kickstarter stuff, and we're running out of time, is the apparent the almost the need to put plastic into a game to make it successful, which is really unfortunate, because there the focus is going into the wrong thing. It absolutely makes a game cool. But is it needed to make the game better? And is the rest of the game suffering because you got to get that plastic in the box?
Right.
I don't know. That's another thing.
Okay. Well, we are out of time, guys.
We are.
Thank you for getting a great conversation going here. We'd love to stay and chat with you.
We're going to try to do this regularly.
Yes, we do want to keep to our time. So let's continue this conversation on our Facebook page. We'll make a post, and if you guys want to share your comments there, we can answer your questions on Facebook.
Yep.
Maybe not right away, but let's continue this conversation. This is a good conversation. We like talking to you guys.
And if you have questions, the topics that you would like us to cover the next time we do these things, awesome.
Yeah, so
do it like an AMA and ask me anything kind of a thing.
Let us know what you want us to talk about next time. Whether an hour is good, would a half an hour be better? If you're listening on YouTube, comment below. Otherwise, comment on our Facebook as well. And I just want to say one more thing. Jeff, you said that you think your kids are interested in 40K. Come out this Sunday to the paint take. I'll be there. We'll talk about it. And then, the only other thing is check out on Facebook. Thanks for tuning in, and let us know what you'd like to see in the future. Anything else before we sign off?
Let's set up Twilight Imperium.
Let's do it.